They destroyed my family. I destroyed their empires.
Marriage is like drywall. You only notice the cracks when the paint peels. My name is Sam Rourke, and I'm about to tell you how my wife Robin tried to destroy me in the rain, and how I made sure she regretted every drop that fell that night. It started with the laughter. Not the good kind. The cruel, whispered kind that stops when you walk into a room. Robin had been having these girls' nights more frequently, and her friends Casey and Morgan would show up at our house in Westfield, Connecticut, giggling like teenagers over wine and secrets. "Sam, honey, could you give us some privacy?" Robin would say, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We're discussing girl stuff." Girl stuff, right. I'm 39 years old, I manage construction projects for a living, and I've heard enough locker room talk to know when women are being just as crude as men. The difference is, they think they're being clever about it. Last Tuesday night, I was in the kitchen grabbing a beer when I heard Casey's voice through the thin wall. "So Julian's new tool collection is impressive," she said, followed by explosive laughter. "Casey, you're terrible," Robin giggled. "But seriously, some husbands need training, like housebreaking a puppy." Morgan chimed in. "Speaking of training, how's your project going, Rob?" "Oh, it's going perfectly. Sam has no idea what's coming. By the time I'm done with him, he'll be begging to sign whatever I put in front of him." I stood there, beer halfway to my lips, feeling something cold settle in my stomach that had nothing to do with the drink. My daughters, Tessa and Mia, were upstairs doing homework. Tessa's 13 and sharp as a tack. She gets her sarcasm from me. Mia's 7 and still believes the world is mostly good. I wanted to keep it that way for as long as possible. That night at dinner, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Robin picked at her salad, constantly checking her phone. Every few minutes, it would buzz with a text, and she'd smile in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. "Mom, why are you always mad at Dad?" Mia asked innocently. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. Robin's head snapped up. "I'm not mad at anyone, sweetheart. Daddy and I are just figuring some things out." Tessa rolled her eyes. "That's adult speak for we're fighting but pretending we're not." "Tessa!" Robin warned. "What?" "It's true. You guys think we're stupid, but we're not. You barely talk to each other anymore, and when you do, you sound like you're reading from a script." I caught Tessa's eye and gave her a slight nod. She was right, of course. Kids always know more than adults think they do. After dinner, I was loading the dishwasher when I noticed Robin's gym bag by the back door. She'd been going to the gym a lot lately. Funny how someone who'd never shown interest in fitness suddenly needed to work out 5 times a week. The bag was unzipped, and I could see her phone charger tangled with something else. I glanced toward the living room where Robin was helping Mia with math homework, then carefully moved the charger aside. There it was, a second phone. A cheap burner phone that definitely didn't belong to my wife's usual collection of high-end devices. My hands were steady as I picked it up and pressed the power button. One text message was displayed on the lock screen. "Can't wait to see you drip tonight. J. Julian." It had to be Julian Grant, the local real estate hotshot who'd been all over Robin's social media lately. The guy who threw charity galas and drove a Tesla and thought his smile could open any door or any marriage. I memorized the phone number, put the device back exactly where I'd found it, and finished loading the dishwasher like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. That night, lying in bed next to my wife while she pretended to sleep, I made a decision. Robin thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She had no idea that I'd been watching, learning, and preparing for something like this my whole adult life. You see, I grew up poor. Really poor. The kind of poor where you learn to notice everything, because missing the wrong detail could mean going hungry, or getting your A kicked. I'd worked construction since I was 16, and construction sites are full of guys who've been screwed over by wives, business partners, and bosses. You learn to read people. You learn to plan ahead. And most importantly, you learn that revenge is a dish best served with a side of public humiliation. The lake house weekend was Robin's idea, naturally. "We should do one last family trip before your big project starts," she said, stirring her coffee with the kind of casual innocence that should have been my first warning. "Casey's family has that place up in Litchfield County. We could make it a group thing, fun for everyone." Fun for everyone. In my experience, when Robin said something would be fun for everyone, it usually meant fun for everyone except me. But I agreed because I wanted to see how far she'd take whatever game she was playing. Plus, I'd already made some preparations of my own. The lake house was one of those rustic but expensive retreats that rich people buy to feel connected to nature without actually roughing it. Casey's husband had inherited it from his grandfather, and they used it maybe 3 times a year to justify the property taxes. Robin invited Casey, Morgan, and Morgan's boyfriend, Derek. I brought Tessa and Mia, figuring they'd enjoy the lake even if the adults were acting like idiots. The first red flag came during the drive up. Robin was unusually chatty, almost manic, talking about how refreshing it would be to clear the air and how sometimes people needed to learn lessons about respect. The second red flag was Julian Grant's Tesla parked behind the cabin when we arrived. "Oh, what a surprise," Robin said, though her acting wouldn't have fooled a kindergartner. "Julian's here too. Casey must have invited him." Casey appeared on the porch, grinning like the Cheshire Cat. "Hope you don't mind the extra company, Sam. Julian was in the area and thought he'd stop by." Julian emerged from the cabin wearing khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. He was one of those guys who'd been good-looking in college and spent his 40s desperately trying to maintain the illusion. His smile was perfect, practiced, and completely predatory. "Sam, great to finally meet you properly," he said, extending his hand like we were old friends. "Robin's told me so much about you." I bet she had. The afternoon was a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. Julian regaled everyone with stories about his real estate deals, his charity work, and his recent trip to Napa Valley. Robin hung on every word like he was reciting poetry. Casey and Morgan giggled at everything he said, even when it wasn't remotely funny. Meanwhile, I helped Tessa and Mia build sandcastles by the lake and watched the adults make asses of themselves. "Dad," Tessa said quietly, "why is Mom acting so weird?" "Define weird," I said, though I knew exactly what she meant. "She keeps laughing at that Julian guy's stupid jokes. And she's being fake nice to you, it's creepy." Out of the mouths of babes. The storm started rolling in around 6 p.m. Big, dark clouds that turned the lake water black and sent everyone scrambling to get inside. We grilled burgers under the covered porch while lightning flickered in the distance. That's when Robin made her move. It started with a staged argument about me embarrassing her in front of her friends. Apparently, I'd been rude to Julian and dismissive of the women's conversation. I'd rolled my eyes at the wrong moment, or laughed at the wrong time, or committed some other unforgivable social sin. "You know what, Sam?" Robin said, her voice rising to make sure everyone could hear. "I am sick and tired of your attitude. You think you're so much smarter than everyone else, but you're just bitter and small." "Robin, come on," I said calmly. "Let's talk about this inside." "No, I'm done talking. You want to act like a child? Fine. Maybe you need to learn what it feels like to be treated like one." That's when Casey dangled her car keys. "You know what? Maybe Sam needs some time to think about how he treats people. A little walk might do him good." The rain was coming down hard now, drumming against the porch roof. Morgan was filming with her phone. Of course she was. This was all going to end up on social media one way or another. "You can't be serious," I said. But Robin was already gathering her purse and Casey was herding Tessa and Mia toward the car. My daughters looked confused and scared. "Dad?" Tessa called out. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said. "Just go with your mom. I'll see you at home." Julian clapped me on the shoulder with fake sympathy. "Don't worry, buddy. We'll make sure they get home safe. Maybe this will teach you to show a little more respect." They loaded into Casey's SUV and Derek's car, leaving me standing on the porch in the pouring rain, 87 miles from home, with no wallet and no phone. Robin had insisted I leave both inside so I could focus on family time. As the taillights disappeared down the winding mountain road, I started laughing, because 3 minutes later, exactly as planned, a black Ford F-250 pulled up the driveway. Ray Martinez climbed out of the driver's seat, water rolling off his jacket like he was made of leather. Ray was ex-military, built like a linebacker, and owed me a favor from 5 years ago when I'd helped him avoid foreclosure on his house. He worked private security now, and when I'd called him 2 days ago to explain my situation, he'd agreed to be my insurance policy. "Ready to go, boss?" he asked, grinning. I walked through the rain to his truck, soaked to the bone but feeling better than I had in months. "Let's start the lesson," I said. As we drove down the mountain, I pulled out the phone Ray had given me and sent a text to Vince Kowalski, my oldest friend and a recently retired cop who'd agreed to help me with what came next. Plan B, initiate. The rain hammered the windshield and lightning illuminated the road ahead. In the passenger seat, I started planning exactly how I was going to destroy my wife's carefully constructed little world. She wanted to teach me a lesson about respect? Fine. Class was officially in session. I walked through my front door at 11:47 p.m., soaking wet and grinning like a wolf. Robin was in the living room, pretending to read a magazine. She looked up with practiced concern, but I caught the flash of surprise in her eyes. She hadn't expected me home so soon. "Oh my God, Sam, I was so worried," she said, jumping up. "When you didn't come back to the lake house, we didn't know what happened to you." "Car broke down about 10 miles down the mountain," I lied smoothly. Lucky for me, an old friend was driving by and gave me a lift. "What friend?" "Ray Martinez. You remember Ray? Helped him out with some work a few years back?" Robin's eyes narrowed slightly. She was trying to figure out if this was a coincidence or something else, but she couldn't ask too many questions without revealing that abandoning me had been intentional. "Well, I'm just glad you're safe," she said. "The girls were worried." "Where are they?" "Asleep upstairs. It's been a long day." I nodded and headed toward the stairs, then paused. "Oh, Robin, next time you want to teach me a lesson, maybe don't leave me somewhere with cell phone service. Ray got my call right away." Her face went pale, but I was already climbing the stairs. The next morning, while Robin was at her mysterious gym session, Vince came over with a toolbox and some equipment that definitely wasn't available at Home Depot. Vince was 62, built like a fire hydrant, and had spent 30 years as a detective before retiring last year. His wife had divorced him 15 years ago, taking half his pension and most of his faith in marriage. When I'd called him about my situation, he'd volunteered his services immediately. "You sure about this, Sammy?" he asked as we installed tiny cameras in the living room and kitchen. "Once you start down this road, there's no going back." "She left me in the rain, Vince, 87 miles from home with my kids watching. Whatever happens next, she earned it." The cameras were legal, installed in common areas of my own house, with audio recording permitted under Connecticut's one-party consent law. Everything we were doing was above board, which was important. I wasn't planning to break any laws. I was planning something much worse. I was going to destroy Robin's reputation so completely that she'd wish I'd just called a lawyer. That afternoon, I started following my wife. Ray had lent me a nondescript Honda Civic, and Robin's gym routine turned out to be remarkably predictable. She'd drive to the fitness center, park in the back lot, then walk 2 blocks to the Marriott Hotel, where Julian Grant kept a suite for business meetings. They weren't exactly subtle about it. Julian would arrive first, Robin would show up 20 minutes later, and they'd spend 2 hours in his room before leaving separately. On Wednesday, I watched them through the hotel restaurant window, sharing dessert and playing footsie like teenagers. Robin had always been attractive, shoulder-length blonde hair, green eyes, the kind of smile that made people trust her immediately. She'd worked in corporate HR for 8 years, climbing the ladder by being everyone's favorite colleague. She was good at reading people, and even better at making them feel special. Julian was her perfect match. Handsome, charming, and completely narcissistic. He was the kind of guy who thought his success in real estate made him irresistible to married women. From what I could tell, he'd been right at least a few times, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They thought I was stupid. Thursday evening, I was in my home office when Tessa knocked on the door. "Dad, can I talk to you?" "Always, kiddo. What's up?" She sat down in the chair across from my desk, looking older than her 13 years. "Mom hates you, doesn't she?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut, but I kept my expression neutral. "Why would you think that?" "She talks to Casey and Morgan about you when she thinks we can't hear. She says mean things, really mean things." "Like what?" Tessa hesitated. "She called you pathetic. She said you were holding her back from being happy. And she laughed when Casey said you needed to be put in your place." I felt that familiar cold rage settling in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What else?" "She's been texting someone a lot, someone named Julian, and she's been lying about where she goes. She's not really going to the gym, is she?" "Smart kid. Too smart for her own good, maybe." "Tessa, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Your mom and I are having some problems, and things might get complicated over the next few weeks. But no matter what happens, you and Mia are the most important things in the world to me. Nothing is going to change that. Understood?" She nodded, but her eyes were worried. "Are you getting divorced?" "I don't know yet. But if we do, I want you to remember that it's not your fault or Mia's fault. Sometimes adults make bad choices, and other adults have to deal with the consequences." That night, Robin came home from her book club, smelling like expensive cologne and looking flushed. She was humming in the shower, happy in a way she hadn't been around me in months. I lay in bed listening to her get ready, and I started planning exactly how I was going to take her apart. The first step was going to be the charity gala. Julian Grant was hosting his annual fundraiser for the local children's hospital next Saturday night. It was the social event of the season in our little corner of Connecticut. All the local big shots would be there, including Robin's boss and most of her social circle. Robin had bought a new dress for the occasion, a red number that cost more than my monthly truck payment, charged to our joint credit card without discussion. She had no idea I'd already bought tickets. She had no idea Vince had contacts at the hotel's AV company. And she definitely had no idea that I'd spent the last 3 days collecting every text message, every photo, and every piece of evidence of her affair with Julian. Saturday night was going to be very educational for everyone involved. The Westfield Country Club looked like something out of a movie on Saturday night. Valet parking, red carpet, photographers from the local paper capturing all the important people in their expensive clothes. Julian's charity gala was the kind of event where being seen mattered more than the actual charity. I arrived alone, wearing my best suit and a smile that probably looked more predatory than I intended. Robin had left 2 hours earlier with Casey and Morgan, planning to make an entrance with the girls. She had no idea I'd be there. The ballroom was packed with Connecticut's suburban elite, real estate developers, bank executives, local politicians, and their perfectly groomed wives. Everyone was drinking wine, eating tiny appetizers, and pretending to care about sick children while they networked and gossiped. I spotted Robin immediately. She was near the bar, wearing her red dress and laughing at something Julian was saying. He had his hand on the small of her back, and she was looking up at him like he'd just invented fire. Casey and Morgan flanked them like bodyguards, scanning the room for threats. They saw me before Robin did, and I watched Casey whisper something in Robin's ear. My wife's head snapped around and our eyes met across the crowded room. The look of shock on her face was worth the price of admission. Julian followed her gaze and spotted me. His politician's smile never wavered, but I saw his jaw tighten. He said something to Robin, then started walking toward me with his hand extended. "Sam, what a wonderful surprise. I didn't know you were coming tonight." "Last-minute decision," I said, shaking his hand and squeezing just hard enough to make him wince. Robin's been talking about this event for weeks. Couldn't miss the chance to support such an important cause. Of course, of course. "Well, please enjoy yourself. The silent auction has some fantastic items this year." He was already backing away, clearly uncomfortable. Good. I made my way to the bar and ordered a whiskey, positioning myself where I could watch the stage. In about 20 minutes, Julian would give his keynote presentation about the hospital's new children's wing. He'd prepared a slideshow full of architectural renderings and heartwarming statistics. What the audience was going to see instead was a very different kind of slideshow. Vince had a contact at Premier AV Services, the company handling the gala's technical needs. For $500 and a bottle of good scotch, Vince's friend had agreed to make a small modification to Julian's presentation file. The modification was currently sitting on a USB drive in my jacket pocket, loaded with screenshots of text messages between Robin and Julian, photos of them together at the hotel, and a few particularly explicit messages that would make the country club crowd clutch their pearls. Nothing illegal, nothing stolen, just the kind of evidence that would destroy both their reputations in our small, gossipy community. At 8:30, Julian took the stage to polite applause. He looked confident and handsome under the spotlights. Every inch the successful businessman and community leader. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight," he began. "As many of you know, the Children's Hospital holds a special place in my heart." He clicked his remote to advance to the first slide. Instead of a hospital logo, the screen filled with a text message conversation. "Julian, can't wait to get you out of that dress tonight. Robin, promises, promises. Sam's working late again. Perfect timing, Julian. Your husband has no idea what he's missing. Robin, his loss is your gain." The ballroom went dead silent. Julian stared at the screen in horror, clicking his remote frantically, but the presentation had been locked. The next slide appeared automatically, a photo of Robin and Julian kissing in the hotel parking lot, taken with a telephoto lens 3 days earlier. Then another text exchange. Robin, "I can't wait to be done with this charade." Julian, "Soon, baby. Once we get rid of the dead weight, we can be together properly." Robin, "He's so pathetic. Actually thinks I'm at book club." The crowd was buzzing now. whispers spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. I saw Robin near the back, her face white as a sheet, frantically trying to push through the crowd toward the exit. Julian had given up on the remote and was gesturing desperately to the AV technician. But the slideshow continued relentlessly. More photos, more texts, a particularly damning exchange where Robin detailed her plan to take Sam for everything he's worth in the divorce. I walked calmly to the stage and took the microphone from Julian's frozen hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's sound system, "I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight to support such an important cause, and I'd especially like to thank my wife Robin for her dedication to the community and to local real estate." The crowd was staring at me in stunned silence. In the back, I could see Robin's boss, Patricia Williams, looking like she'd swallowed a lemon. Patricia was the VP of Human Resources at Robin's company, and she took a very dim view of employees who created scandals. "Now I know what you're all thinking," I continued. "This is supposed to be about helping children, and you're absolutely right. So let's talk about the lessons we teach our kids. Lessons about honesty, about keeping promises, about treating people with respect." I looked directly at Robin, who was now crying and being comforted by Casey and Morgan. "My wife taught me a very important lesson last weekend. She taught me that sometimes people show you exactly who they are, and you should believe them the first time. She left me stranded in the rain 87 miles from home because she thought I needed to learn about respect." I smiled, and I knew it wasn't a nice smile. "Well, Robin, class is in session." I handed the microphone back to Julian, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor, and walked off the stage to scattered applause and a lot of shocked murmuring. The rest of the evening was chaos. Robin and Julian fled within minutes, followed closely by Casey and Morgan. The slideshow finally ended, but the damage was done. By the time I left the gala an hour later, the story was already spreading through social media and text message chains across Westfield. I drove home feeling better than I had in months, but the real fun was just getting started. Sunday morning brought the consequences. I was making pancakes for Tessa and Mia when Robin came storming through the front door, still wearing her red dress from the night before. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was a mess, and she looked like she'd been crying for hours. "You bastard," she hissed, trying to keep her voice down so the girls wouldn't hear. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." "I didn't humiliate you, Robin. I just showed everyone what you'd been doing behind my back. There's a difference. Those were private messages between my wife and her boyfriend, discussing how to screw me over in a divorce. Yeah, I can see why you'd want to keep those private." Tessa appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking back and forth between us. "Mom, are you okay?" Robin composed herself instantly, switching to her fake sweet voice. "I'm fine, honey. Daddy and I just need to have a conversation." "About the pictures?" Tessa asked innocently. Robin's face went white. "What pictures?" "The ones everyone's sharing on Instagram. Casey's daughter Madison showed them to me at soccer practice yesterday. She said you and some man were—" "Tessa, go upstairs," Robin snapped. "But now—" Tessa looked at me and I nodded. She disappeared upstairs, but I knew she'd be listening from the landing. Smart kid. Robin waited until she heard Tessa's door close, then turned back to me with pure venom in her eyes. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Well, congratulations, Sam. You just destroyed your daughter's lives along with mine. How do you think they're going to feel when everyone at school knows their mother is a cheater?" I suggested helpfully. "Liar? Homewrecker?" She slapped me, hard. The sound cracked through the kitchen like a thunderclap. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her calmly and said, "Feel better?" That's when she completely lost it. "I hate you!" she screamed. "I have hated you for years. You're boring and small and pathetic, and I can't stand the sight of you. Julian makes me feel alive again. He makes me feel like a woman instead of a babysitter for a grown man who can't even dress himself properly." "Are you done?" I asked. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving with rage and adrenaline. "I'm calling my lawyer first thing Monday morning. I'm going to take you for everything you're worth. The house, the cars, the kids, everything. And there's nothing you can do to stop me." I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. "Actually, Robin, there's quite a lot I can do to stop you. See, while you were playing house with Julian, I was talking to my own lawyer, Turns out adultery still matters in Connecticut, especially when it comes to custody and property division. Her confidence wavered slightly. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. Text messages, photos, hotel receipts, witness statements. I've got enough evidence to bury you in court. Plus, I've been documenting your parenting for the past month. All those nights you were at book club while I helped the girls with homework. All those school events you missed because you were at the gym. It's all documented. Robin sank into a chair across from me, the fight going out of her like air from a punctured balloon. What do you want? She whispered. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You wanted to teach me a lesson about respect? Fine. Consider this my master class on the subject. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled. Oh, and Robin, you might want to call in sick tomorrow. Patricia Williams just texted me. Apparently, the company has a zero-tolerance policy for employees who create public scandals. Something about maintaining professional standards. Robin stared at me in horror. She can't fire me for this. She can't fire you for having an affair. But she can fire you for bringing negative publicity to the company, especially when that publicity involves detailed discussions of your plans to commit fraud in your divorce proceedings. I stood up and rinsed my coffee cup in the sink. The girls and I are going to spend the day at the park. When we get back, I'd like you to be packed and staying somewhere else. Casey's couch, Julian's place, wherever. But you're not sleeping in this house tonight. You can't kick me out of my own home. Actually, I can. My name's on the deed, not yours. Your name's on the mortgage, which makes you responsible for payments on a house you can't legally enter without my permission. I headed toward the stairs to get the girls ready. Oh, and Robin, if you try to take Tessa and Mia with you, I'll have you arrested for kidnapping. I've already filed for emergency custody based on your abandonment of parental duties and your ongoing mental health crisis. Mental health crisis? I paused at the bottom of the stairs. Well, what would you call a woman who abandons her husband in a thunderstorm, carries on a public affair, and then has a screaming breakdown in front of her children? Because I'm pretty sure a family court judge would have some strong opinions about that kind of behavior. Robin was still sitting at the kitchen table when we left for the park. She was still there when we got back 3 hours later, but her suitcases were by the front door. I'll be staying with Casey for a few days, she said quietly, until I can figure things out. Good choice, I said. Casey's used to cleaning up other people's messes. That night, after Tessa and Mia were asleep, I sat in my home office and planned the next phase of my campaign. Robin thought Saturday night was the end of her humiliation. She had no idea it was just the beginning. Julian Grant was about to learn that destroying a man's family comes with a price, and that price was going to be everything he'd spent his life building. Monday morning brought a phone call that made my week. Sam, it's Patricia Williams from Robin's office. I hope you don't mind me calling you directly. Patricia was Robin's boss, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd built her career on maintaining corporate standards and avoiding scandals. She'd been at the gala Saturday night front and center for Robin's public humiliation. Not at all, Patricia. What can I do for you? I wanted to give you a heads up that we've placed Robin on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. The company has received several complaints about her conduct, and we need to review her employment status. I'm sorry to hear that, I lied smoothly. Robin's always been very dedicated to her work. Yes, well, dedication to work and dedication to professional standards are two different things. I also wanted to let you know that if you need any documentation for legal proceedings, our HR department will cooperate fully with any court orders. Translation: they were going to throw Robin under the bus to protect the company's reputation. I appreciate that, Patricia. I hope this doesn't cause too much disruption for your team. We'll manage. Take care of yourself, Sam, and those girls. After Patricia hung up, I called Vince to give him an update. Jesus, Sammy, you're really going scorched earth on this, aren't you? She left me in the rain, Vince, with my kids watching. She made them accessories to her cruelty. Fair enough. What's next? Julian, it's time to remind Mr. Grant that actions have consequences. That afternoon, I drove to Julian's real estate office in downtown Westfield. Grant Properties occupied the ground floor of a restored Victorian building, all exposed brick and polished hardwood floors. Very tasteful, very expensive, very Julian. I parked across the street and waited. At 3:15, Julian's Tesla pulled into the reserved parking spot in front of his building. He climbed out wearing a charcoal suit and looking like he hadn't slept much since Saturday night. I waited until he was inside, then walked across the street and through the front door of his office. The receptionist, a young blonde who probably got hired for her looks rather than her typing skills, looked up nervously as I approached. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Julian Grant. Tell him Sam Rourke would like a word." Her eyes widened. Even she knew who I was after Saturday night's performance. I'm not sure Mr. Grant is available." "Oh, he's available," I said, walking past her toward the corner office with Julian's name on the door. I opened the door without knocking. Julian was behind his desk, talking on the phone, but he hung up immediately when he saw me. "Sam, I don't think this is a good idea." "Relax, Julian. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to have a friendly conversation between men." I sat down in the chair across from his desk and looked around the office. Awards and certificates covered the walls, along with photos of Julian shaking hands with local politicians and celebrities. His desk was mahogany, probably cost more than most people's cars. "Nice place," I said. "You've done well for yourself?" "Sam, about Saturday night. What about it?" That was a private matter between Robin and me. You had no right to air our business in public like that." I leaned back in my chair and studied him. Up close, Julian looked older than his 41 years. There were lines around his eyes and his hair was thinning on top despite the expensive styling. He was fighting a losing battle against time and gravity just like every other middle-aged man trying to recapture his youth. "Private matter?" I repeated. "You mean like when you and my wife decided to abandon me on a mountain road in the middle of a thunderstorm? That kind of private matter?" Julian's face flushed red. "That wasn't my idea." "But you went along with it. You helped load my daughters into the car while their father stood in the rain. You thought it was funny." Look, Sam, I'm sorry about that. It got out of hand." "Yes, it did, and now we're dealing with the consequences." I stood up and walked to the window overlooking Main Street. Julian's office had a perfect view of the town square, where a small crowd had gathered around the weekly farmers market. "You know what I love about small towns, Julian? Everyone knows everyone else's business. Word travels fast. Reputations matter." "What are you getting at?" I turned back to face him. "I'm getting at the fact that your reputation in this town is built on being a pillar of the community. The charity work, the civic involvement, the family values BS. But now everyone knows you're just another middle-aged predator who goes after married women." "I'm not a predator." "Really? Because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you targeted a vulnerable woman going through a rough patch in her marriage, fed her a bunch of lines about how special she was, and convinced her to betray her family. What would you call that?" Julian was sweating now, despite the air conditioning. "Robin came to me. She made the first move." "Maybe, but you sure as heck didn't discourage her, did you?" I walked back to his desk and leaned forward, placing my hands on the polished wood surface. "Here's what's going to happen, Julian. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stay away from my children. And you're going to stay away from me. Because if you don't, I'm going to make Saturday night look like a warm-up act." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you. See, you made a mistake when you decided to mess with my family. You thought I was just some blue-collar nobody who wouldn't fight back. You thought wrong." I straightened up and headed for the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. "Oh, and Julian, you might want to check your car before you drive home tonight. Sometimes expensive vehicles develop problems when they're parked in public spaces." I left him sitting behind his desk, looking like he'd seen a ghost. In the parking lot, Ray Martinez was waiting by Julian's Tesla with a cordless drill and a wicked grin. "All 4 tires?" he asked. "All 4 tires," I confirmed. We also keyed Home Wrecker into the hood of his car and put a magnetic sign on the driver's door that read "Adulterer" in big red letters. By the time Julian discovered the damage, Ray and I were long gone, but not before Ray set up a camera across the street to record Julian's reaction when he found his car. The video of Julian screaming and cursing in the middle of Main Street went viral on social media within hours. The war was escalating, and I was winning every battle. But Robin and Julian weren't finished yet. They were about to make their biggest mistake of all. They were going to try to take my daughters. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on Thursday morning. "Sam, it's Lex." Robin's cousin sounded nervous, almost whispering into the phone. "You need to know something. Robin and Julian are planning to take the girls tomorrow morning while you're at work. They're going to claim you're an unfit father and file for emergency custody." Lex had been Robin's ally for years, but apparently Saturday night's revelations had opened her eyes to what kind of person her cousin really was. She'd been feeding me information all week, and this was the big one. "What's their plan?" I asked, already getting dressed. "Julian's got a lawyer friend who's going to file papers claiming you're mentally unstable and dangerous. They're going to say the gala thing was evidence of a psychological breakdown. Robin's going to pick up Tessa and Mia from school and drive them to Julian's place, then call the police and claim she's protecting them from you." "When?" "Tomorrow afternoon. Robin's supposed to be at the elementary school at 2:30 to get Mia, then the middle school at 3:15 for Tessa." I looked at the clock. It was already Thursday morning, which gave me less than 12 hours to prepare. "Lex, I need you to do something for me." By 7 a.m., I had everything in place. Ray was positioned outside Mia's school with a camera and a legal document giving me exclusive custody rights, something I'd filed Tuesday morning as soon as Robin moved out. Vince was at Tessa's school with backup documentation and a direct line to his contacts in the police department. And I was sitting in my truck across the street from Julian's office, waiting for the show to begin. At 2:25 p.m., Robin's Honda pulled into the parking lot of Westfield Elementary. She was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, probably thinking she looked inconspicuous. She had no idea that Ray was filming her from 50 feet away. She walked into the school office and tried to sign Mia out for a dental appointment. The secretary, who'd been briefed by the principal an hour earlier, politely informed Robin that only the custodial parent could remove children from school without advance written permission. Robin argued for 10 minutes, demanding to speak to the principal, threatening to call the school board, making a scene that Ray captured on video from the hallway. Finally, security escorted her out of the building. Strike one. At 3:10, she tried the same thing at Tessa's middle school. This time, Vince was waiting in the office with a copy of the custody order and his retired police badge. When Robin started screaming about her rights as a mother, Vince calmly explained that she'd forfeited those rights when she abandoned her children to run off with her boyfriend. Tessa, who'd been called to the office, took one look at her mother's frantic state and said, "I want to go home with Dad." Strike two. By 4 p.m., Robin was back at Julian's office, pacing around his reception area like a caged animal. I could see her through the window, gesturing wildly while Julian tried to calm her down. That's when I made my move. I walked into the office carrying a manila envelope and wearing my best innocent expression. "Afternoon, folks. Hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Robin spun around, her face twisted with rage. "You son of a witch! You knew! You sabotaged everything!" "I have no idea what you're talking about, Robin. I just came by to deliver some paperwork to Julian." I handed him the envelope. "Restraining order. You're not allowed within 500 feet of me, my children, or my property. Violation is a felony." Julian opened the envelope with shaking hands. His face went white as he read the legal documents. "This is harassment," Robin snarled. "No, Robin, this is consequences. You tried to kidnap my children. That's a felony in Connecticut. They're my children, too." "Were, past tense. You gave up your parental rights when you chose your boyfriend over your family." That's when she completely lost it. Robin launched herself at me, fingernails aimed at my face, screaming like a banshee. I caught her wrists easily. Construction work builds strong hands, and held her at arm's length while she thrashed and cursed. Julian just stood there, frozen, holding the restraining order like it might explode. "You want to call the police, Julian?" I asked calmly. "Because assault is also a felony." Robin was crying now, her rage collapsing into despair. "I hate you," she sobbed. "I hate you so much." "I know," I said, releasing her wrists. "But hate's not going to get you your old life back. That's gone forever." I looked at Julian, who was still standing there like a deer in headlights. "By the way, Julian, you might want to check your business license. Turns out the state takes a dim view of real estate agents who get involved in domestic disputes. Something about professional standards and public trust." His face went even whiter. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the complaint I filed with the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection. Seems like using your professional connections to help someone kidnap children might be grounds for license revocation." I headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Robin, your lawyer called. Apparently Patricia Williams sent him copies of all your work emails from the past 6 months. The ones where you discussed using company resources for personal business? Yeah, those are evidence now." Robin sank into a chair, her head in her hands. "One more thing," I said. Tomorrow night, there's going to be a town council meeting. Guess who's on the agenda? Julian's application for the new Civic Center development project. I'm planning to attend, as a concerned citizen, of course. Julian's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. See you there, folks. Should be educational. I walked out of the office and into the afternoon sunshine, feeling lighter than I had in months. The war was almost over. All that remained was the final battle, and I was going to win it in front of the entire town. Friday night, the Westfield Town Council meeting was standing room only. Word had spread about Julian's appearance on the agenda, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next in the ongoing soap opera. I arrived early and took a seat in the front row, wearing my best suit and carrying a folder full of documentation. Vince and Ray flanked me like bodyguards, both grinning with anticipation. Julian entered the council chambers at exactly 7 p.m., looking like he was walking to his own execution. He was accompanied by his lawyer, a nervous-looking man who kept checking his watch and whispering urgent advice. Robin wasn't there. According to Lex, she was at Casey's house, drinking wine and planning her next move. Good. This was between Julian and me now. The council went through the usual boring business first. Budget discussions, zoning permits, routine stuff that made half the audience check their phones. But when they called Julian's name for the Civic Center presentation, the room went dead silent. Julian walked to the podium like he was climbing the gallows. He'd prepared a PowerPoint presentation about his vision for the new development, complete with architectural renderings and economic impact projections. He never got to show it. Before Mr. Grant begins his presentation, I said, standing up, I'd like to exercise my right as a citizen to address the council about this matter. The council chairman, an elderly man named Peterson who'd known me since I was a kid, nodded. The floor recognizes Sam Rourke. I walked to the podium, gently but firmly displacing Julian, who looked like he might faint. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, my name is Sam Rourke. I'm a lifelong resident of Westfield, a taxpayer, and a father of 2 daughters who attend our local schools. I opened my folder and pulled out the first document. I'm here tonight to discuss the character and qualifications of Julian Grant, who's asking this community to trust him with a multi-million-dollar development project. Julian's lawyer started to object, but Peterson waved him off. This is a public forum, Counselor. Mr. Rourke has the right to speak. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, character matters when we're talking about public trust, so I'd like to share some information about Mr. Grant's recent activities. I pulled out a photograph, one of the cleaner ones from Julian and Robin's hotel meetings. This is a picture of Mr. Grant with my wife, taken 3 weeks ago at the Marriott Hotel. At the time, Mr. Grant knew that Mrs. Rourke was married with 2 young children. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Julian was sweating profusely now. Now, adultery might be a private matter between consenting adults, but conspiracy to commit fraud is not. I pulled out printouts of the text messages. These are communications between Mr. Grant and my wife, discussing their plans to manipulate divorce proceedings and hide assets. Mr. Grant offered to help my wife conceal income and property in exchange for intimate favors. Julian's lawyer was on his feet now. Objection! This is character assassination! This is evidence, I replied calmly. Evidence of Mr. Grant's willingness to break the law when it serves his personal interests. I pulled out the final document. And this is a police report filed yesterday morning. Mr. Grant and my wife attempted to remove my children from school without legal authority, in violation of a court-ordered custody arrangement. When that failed, they conspired to file false charges against me with the police. The room was buzzing now. Peterson was banging his gavel for order. The question before this council, I continued, is simple. Do you want to trust a man who preys on married women, conspires to commit fraud, and attempts to kidnap children with millions of dollars in public money? I closed my folder and looked directly at Julian. Mr. Grant likes to present himself as a pillar of the community, but pillars are supposed to hold things up, not tear them down. This man destroyed my family for his own selfish pleasure. What makes you think he won't destroy this community for his own selfish profit? I walked back to my seat in complete silence. Julian stood at the podium for a full minute, opening and closing his mouth like a landed fish, before finally mumbling something about withdrawing his application and fleeing the chambers. The council voted unanimously to reject his proposal. As I left the building, surrounded by neighbors who were patting my back and offering their support, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The storm had broken. The lesson was over. Robin and Julian had taught me something valuable. that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who'll hurt you worst. But I taught them something too, that underestimating a man who has nothing left to lose is the biggest mistake you can make. 6 months later, Robin was working as a receptionist in Hartford, 40 miles away. Julian had left town entirely. His real estate license revoked and his reputation destroyed. Casey and Morgan had found new friends to gossip with. Tessa and Mia were thriving. They'd adjusted to the divorce better than I'd expected, probably because they were no longer living in a house full of lies and resentment, and me? I was building again, not just construction projects, but a new life, a better life, an honest life. The rain had stopped, the sun was shining, and I was exactly where I belonged.